Naranjana Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astotara Satasvi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Abhay Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astotara Satasvi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nantakoti Vaishnav Vrind Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय। श्री नवद्वीप मायपुर धाम की जय। श्री मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी महारानी की जय। सामवेद भक्त वृंद की जय। Nitai Gaur Premanande Hare Hare Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We continue with our reading of Sri Isopanisad, Mantra 12, the invocation to Sri Isopanisad. Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnam Adhaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Translation. The personality of Godhead is perfect and complete, and because He is completely perfect, all emanations from Him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped as complete wholes. Whatever is produced by the complete whole is also complete in itself, because He is the complete whole. Even though so many complete units emanate from Him, He remains the complete balance. Today we will be reading mantra number 12. Andham tama pravishanti ye asambhutim upashyate tato bhuya evate tamo ya o sambhutyam rata. Translation. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more so do the worshippers of the impersonal Absolute. So everyone, please repeat. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more to the worshippers of the impersonal Absolute. So we'll discuss the purport, which is quite lengthy. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurul Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manubhishtam Shtapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sahagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatan Vitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Satudevi Pranamami Hari Priye Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschetta Deshatharine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavinebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation again, Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more do the worshippers of the impersonal Absolute. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The Sanskrit word asambhuti refers to those who have no independent existence. Sambhuti is the absolute personality of Godhead who is absolutely independent of everything. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.2, the absolute personality of Godhead Sri Krishna states, Na me vidu suragana prabhavan na maharishaya aham adir hi devanam maharishim cha sarvasha. Translation: neither the hosts of demigods nor the great sages know my origin or opulences, for in every respect I am the source of the demigods and the sages. Thus, Krishna is the origin of the powers delegated to demigods, great sages and mystics. Although they are endowed with great powers, these powers are limited, and thus it is very difficult for them to know how Krishna himself appears by his own internal potency in the form of a man. Many philosophers and great rishis or mystics try to distinguish the absolute truth from the relative by their tiny brain power. This can only help them reach the negative conception of the absolute without realizing any positive trace of the absolute. Definition of the absolute by negation is not complete. Such negative definitions lead one to create a concept of one's own. Thus, one imagines that the absolute must be formless and without qualities. Such negative qualities are simply reversals of relative material qualities and are therefore also relative. By conceiving of the absolute in this way, one can at the utmost reach the impersonal effulgence of God, known as Brahman. But one cannot make further progress into the progress to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. Such mental speculators do not know that the absolute personality of Godhead is Krishna, and that the impersonal Brahman is the glaring effulgence of his personal body, or that the Parama Atma, the super soul, is his all-pervading plenary representation. Nor do they know that Krishna has his eternal form with its transcendental qualities of eternal bliss and knowledge. The independent demigods and great sages perfectly consider him to be a powerful demigod, and they consider the Brahman effulgence to be the absolute truth. But the devotees of Krishna, by dint of their surrendering unto him and their unalloyed devotion, can know that he is the absolute person and that everything emanates from him. Such devotees continuously render loving service unto Krishna, the fountainhead of everything. So this verse we read, we've practically read in practically every book of Srila Prabhupada about demigod worship and worshipping or the impersonal feature of the Lord. There are major themes in Prabhupada's preaching. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pascheta Deshatarine. Our respectful obeisances unto you, our spiritual master, servant of Saraswati Goswami. You are kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Deva and delivering the Western countries which are full with impersonalism and voidism. So this is Prabhupada's mission, to deliver the Western countries which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. And here we're reading from Isopanisad, which is on a higher level, because here it is stressed. Those who are engaged in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance, and still more do the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. It's a very serious thing. For us, we should try and understand what is this impersonalism, because it's Prabhupada's mission. Every day we're chanting our pranam mantras to Prabhupada. And he's saying his mission is to deliver the world from impersonalism and voidism. And here in the purport, Prabhupada is giving us the definition. Such mental speculators do not know that the absolute personality of Godhead is Krishna, and that the impersonal Brahman is the glaring effulgence of his transcendental body. That is the impersonal feature. And it is considered the beginning of our spiritual journey. But here in this verse we read that those who worship the impersonal Brahman, they enter into the darkest region of hell, into darkest region of ignorance. So impersonalism, actually Prabhupada mentions in one lecture that the impersonalists try to make everything zero. And you'll find that the impersonalists, those who follow, they do this, they try to negate, or they simply try to be by themselves. They have no personality. And many of the followers, they have no rules and regulations to follow. And they think that God cannot be a person, because we human beings on this planet, we are persons, and when they look at the behavior of the human beings on this planet, and they say, no, God cannot be a person. When you see how badly the human beings on this planet behave, how can God be a person? So his behavior must be like human beings as well. Therefore, they negate this idea, and they simply stick to the impersonal feature of God. So let's read a little from a lecture of Prabhupada. It is very nice, very instructive about the impersonal philosophy. So the beginning of our spiritual realization is this impersonalism. When human beings become frustrated in their material life, they work hard, they do everything to get happiness through sense gratification. They become frustrated with their relationships, with so many situations, and then they try to approach God to find some relief, to get some answers for their problems. So they approach God, and this is how they go into the impersonal philosophy, because they don't want anything to do with people, with human beings, and therefore they will not accept God as a person, because they compare God to human beings, and human beings behave badly, then they think God must also be like this. Therefore they approach the impersonal feature. So Prabhupada responds to a letter in 1969. Prabhupada says or writes, regarding Omkara, you may know that Om is the impersonal sound form of Krishna. Those who are unable to utter immediately the sweet name of Krishna, they are recommended to chant Om. Prabhupada continues, just like a child is taught to make a particular type of sound, and thus he learns the name of the father, mother, and other relatives. Child is making some sound. Just like a child is taught to make a particular type of sound, and thus he learns the name of his father, mother, and other relatives. This is the beginning. So in the beginning, Om is the right vibration of transcendental sound, and the meaning is to address the Supreme Lord. Our business is directly with the Supreme Lord. Impersonal feature of the Lord is just like the illumination of a lamp. So Prabhupada also says in another lecture about Mayavadi philosophy, Prabhupada says, the Mayavadis think, make me zero, void. Then there will be no pains and pleasures, no embarrassment. Impersonalism and voidism are the same thing. Make it zero. The Mayavadis are like the foolish man who wants to avoid the embarrassment of committing suicide. He thinks, if I end this body, then my embarrassment will be finished. Prabhupada also states, the Mayavadi philosopher thinks, suppose I get free, where shall I go? I shall be free in the sky. That is impersonalism. And Prabhupada gives a nice example of people who take care of a certain type of bird in India. In India, people sometimes take a certain kind of bird in a cage to an open field. Then they open the door of the cage and the bird walks and flies around for some time. He is given freedom. Then the person calls the bird and the bird returns. The bird was thinking, I have been given freedom now, but where shall I go? I have to eat. So he comes back. Better to live within the cage. And this is so true. If you have your freedom, if you don't have food, you don't have shelter, what's the value? So this bird is thinking, I have my freedom, but where will I get my shelter? Where will I get my food? Therefore he comes back into the cage, because he gets everything from his master. The Mayavadi position is like that, Prabhupada says. We devotees are sure we are going to Krishna, but the Mayavadis have no Krishna. Therefore, they return to the material world because they have no shelter. They come back. They cannot stay very long in the impersonal feature of the Absolute. Therefore, the Mayavadi philosophy of voidism or impersonalism is not very good. You cannot stay impersonal or in a void because you are a living entity, part and parcel of the supreme living entity, Krishna. Krishna is Ananda Mayo Abhaya Sat. He is always full of jubilation. So being part and parcel of Krishna, you also want jubilation. But how can you be jubilant in the sky? In the zero. That is the difference between Mayavadi philosophy and the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Also in another lecture or in a conversation, Prabhupada says they want to make everything zero. Then what will they preach about? What will they talk? They're opening big monasteries. What are they doing? They're simply cheating people. If you make everything zero, what can you talk about zero? There's no personality. Here we see these wonderful pictures of Krishna. When the tourists and guests come, we can explain to them about these pictures. And we can tell them, you can physically go and visit these places where these pastimes took place. It is not mythology or storytelling or someone's imagination. It's factual. So in this way, they can understand that there's a deep philosophy behind this whole temple when they see these pictures. It is just not another Hindu temple, where it's just no one can actually explain. Ultimately, we'll read or hear of a very nice pastime just now of Prabhupada. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Giriraj Govardhan ki jai, Yashoda Damodar ki jai, Gaur Hari ki jai, Tulsi Maharani ki jai, Guru Parampara ki jai. So Mayavadis want to make everything zero. So what do? Yet they open big monasteries, they give such nice talks. It is all based on this impersonalism. And people are attracted to it. See? But what we've heard, that no one, the impersonalists, the Mayavadis, the yogis, they are very powerful as well because they're very austere. They also have sannyasis who are very strict, and they become very powerful because of their practice of celibacy and the austerities that they perform. They're also very powerful. But they can enter into the Brahmajyoti, but they will have to come back. Because what we've read, there's nothing further that they can achieve in the Brahmajyoti. And because this soul is always seeking enjoyment, the enjoyment is limited in the Brahmajyoti. Therefore, they come back to this world. It is not a permanent situation. Prabhupada continues, you cannot be happy even by getting free from this engagement, the material world. And if you place yourself in impersonalism and voidism, that will not help you. Try to understand this. Impersonalism and voidism will not help you. You have to go back home, back to Krishna, where everything exists in spiritual variety. You can play with Krishna. You can dance with Krishna. You can talk with Krishna. You can fight with Krishna. Krishna's friends, the coward boys, fight with him. That they enjoy in that way. Everything in the spiritual world with Krishna is enjoyment. So during the 70s, Prabhupada went to Japan, he went to Tokyo. He went to see or discuss with the printer, Dain Nippon, I think it was. And during his time in Tokyo, one of his disciples, Burijan Prabhu, His Grace Burijan Prabhu, he was preaching in Tokyo, and he arranged a preaching engagement for Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, I think it was maybe the Indian community that arranged a Sadhu Sangha program, and they had many sannyasis, and they invited Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada spoke, and there was one, as we hear later, a Mayavadi sannyasi. He began to speak in Hindi, and Prabhupada could understand Hindi. And first Prabhupada said that he was speaking very nicely. And then he began to explain Panchopasana, which is the worship of 5 spiritual personalities. First you worship Surya, the sun god, Ganesh, Durga, Shiva, and then Vishnu. So in this way, this Mayavadi sannyasi was explaining this system of worship of these 5 great personalities. But then at the end, he says that everything was impersonal and void. And when Prabhupada heard this, immediately asked the devotees who were there to start kirtan in the middle of this other sannyasi's talk, which is quite rude and, not according to etiquette. But immediately Prabhupada, he asked him, get up and have kirtan. And the devotees did that. And it disrupted the program a little. And at the end, when Prabhupada went back to the place he was staying, His Grace Purijan Prabhu asked Prabhupada, why did you ask us to do this? And then Prabhupada said, he was preaching nicely. He spoke about the Panchopasana, but then he said that ultimately everything is impersonal. And Prabhupada said, when I heard this, I could not tolerate it. And this is blasphemy. And Prabhupada said that it was the mission of his Guru, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, to destroy this impersonalism. And we see Prabhupada, how much he understood the mind of his Guru. When he wrote the famous Vyasa Puja offering to Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. And practically in the beginning, Prabhupada says that how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, he has proved the personal feature to be the highest. And when Srila Bhakti Siddhanta read this, he asked his editors of his various publications that whenever Abhay Charanarvinda writes something, print it in our books, because he has understood. So impersonal calamity thou has removed. So Prabhupada also, following in his Guru in this pastime in Tokyo, he immediately asked the devotees to have kirtan and stop this person from speaking impersonalism. The other aspect of this verse that we read is of demigod worship. And the demigods are, or devas, there are 33 million demigods. They are the empowered servants of Lord Krishna. They provide everything for keeping the body and soul together. And we'll read a little of some of the powers of the demigods. This is from Sriman Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, verses 2 to 7. Translation: one who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahma Jyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma or Brihaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king Indra. And one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire. And one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship Rudra, the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva, if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of Aditi. One who desires worldly kingdom should worship Vishwadeva. And one who worships and one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Ashwini Kumaras. And a person desiring a strong built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. And one who desires a good wife should worship the Asparas and the Urvashi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead, and one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. So these, of course, many of you may have heard of some of these demigods for the first time. They're not so popular. But I'm going to read a little pastime of Prabhupada with one of the most popular demigods, Ganesh. Everyone worships Ganesh to remove obstacles. So this is a very nice, not pastime, I think it's a response to a letter by Prabhupada. Source of demigods. Yes. So, Ganapati. There was a situation, I think, that some devotees or one devotee requested or inquired to Prabhupada about demigod worship, especially the worship of Ganesh, where in certain places it's mentioned the name of Ganesh, that we can worship Ganesh, and also the goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning. We should approach Saraswati. So here it's mentioned we should know the position of Prabhupada basically. In the Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada writes, one should begin the worship of the demigod Ganapati, who drives away all impediments in the execution of devotional service. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that Ganapati worships the lotus feet of Lord Nrsimha Deva. And in that way, he has become auspicious for the devotees in clearing out all impediments. Therefore, all devotees should worship Ganapati. It's in Sastra, in Nectar of Devotion. We can take this as a clear and authoritative proof that Srila Prabhupada wanted all devotees in his society to worship Ganapati Ganesh. But balance that passage against this letter to Shivananda Das, August 25th, 1971. This is a letter by Prabhupada to Shivananda Das in 1971. So far worshipping Ganesh is concerned, that is not necessary. Not that it should be done on a regular basis. If you like, you can pray to Ganesh for removing all impediments on the path of Krishna consciousness. That you can do if you like. I do not, the Prabhupada continues, I do not encourage you to worship this demigod Ganesh. It is not required, it is not necessary. Simply worship Krishna. Perform nice devotional service to Krishna. Then your lives will certainly become perfect. Of course, if one has some sentiment for achieving the blessings of Ganesh, for accumulating large sums of money to serve Krishna, then he may perform this Ganesh worship privately, not making a public show. And then Prabhupada gives the requirement for this. But first of all, he must give me $100,000 per month. Nothing less. If he can supply this amount, $100,000 per month, then he will be allowed to do this Ganesh Puja. Otherwise, he should not do it. It will not be good. That is my order. So sometimes here we see, for an ordinary person, he may see a contradiction. Shastra is saying you can worship Ganesh, but Prabhupada says don't worship Ganesh. And then he gives the reasons why and what we should do, and we should pay him to do it. But I don't think anyone can do that, $100,000 per month. So better stick to devotional service to Lord Krishna. Sometimes you'll find on the road we have the traffic lights, the robots that work perfectly well. But sometimes you'll find that there is a traffic policeman, a pointsman, and he is controlling the traffic. Although the traffic lights are working, still the pointsman will direct the traffic. So higher than the traffic light that's working is the traffic policeman, the pointsman. So that's how Prabhupada is. He is the bona fide spiritual teacher, and he is giving direction which we should follow. So here Prabhupada is clearly giving the example of Ganesh in a very nice letter, that he's saying don't worship Ganesh, simply worship Krishna. And we learn from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I am the source of the demigods. I'm ultimately, I make them powerful. I make the demigods powerful enough so they can award benedictions to their devotees. But ultimately, whatever benedictions that the demigods give you is ultimately coming from me, Krishna. So this is what Krishna says. So in this verse we read from, or this mantra from the Sri Isopanisad, it is so clear on a higher level. Sri Isopanisad is saying that if we worship the impersonal feature, which is the glaring effulgence of Lord Krishna, and we worship demigods, we're going to go to hell. And hell is not a nice place. That's another seminar on the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a terrible place, and it is factual. Bhagavatam is so real. When we read and then we see these things are going on in this world. So the description of the hellish planets in the Srimad Bhagavatam are real. It is not there to this make the book look big or whatever. It is real. So hellish planets are a terrible place to go. And in this verse from the this mantra from the Isopanisad, it's clearly saying those who engage in the worship of demigods enter into the darkest region of ignorance. Still more do the worshippers of the impersonal absolute. So by Prabhupada's mercy we can understand what is demigod worship, what is impersonal worship, and what is Krishna consciousness and how we should remain in Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna. We will take your comments and questions. There's one question here.
Thank you, Radhika Jivan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
If I remember correctly, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a text which explains that if we worship the demigods, we go to the planets of the demigods. But now we're hearing actually we enter into the hellish planets. Can you please explain that?
Yes. Wherever there is a repeated birth and death, Krishna says, Brahma Bhuvana Loka, from the highest planet down to the lowest planet, all are places of misery wherein repeated birth and death takes place. But one who comes to my eternal abode, he doesn't take birth again. So that is hellish condition, repeated birth and death. But in this verse, it's said that you enter into the darkest region of hell. So even if we go to the heavenly planets, we still have to come back here, because basically heavenly planets mean a higher level of sense gratification. But ultimately, it will come to an end and then we are brought back down to this material world. So that is hell. No eternal life. That is hellish condition. And sense gratification simply means this cycle, this samsara, the cycle of birth and death. So on a higher level, due to our realization, we will understand even if we go to the heavenly planets, it's hellish because there's sense gratification. Sense gratification means forgetfulness of Krishna. And that's hellish. And then our pious activities in this planet, we enjoy in the higher planets. When that pious punya or the results of the pious activities is depleted, then we are again brought to this earthly planet. So what's the difference? This is hellish, the lower planets are hellish, and the higher planets are the same because there's repeated birth and death. There's forgetfulness of Krishna. Anyone else wants to add on to that? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
Haribol Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
If one chooses to offer to both the demigods as well as Krishna, what happens in that case? I'm sure there's a lot of people that does that.
Yeah. So it's a case of gaining knowledge. Because you say if one chooses to worship, to offer, make food offerings to the demigods first and then to Krishna. So it's a case of gaining knowledge. What is the correct thing to do? And it will depend on your status, whether you are practicing to become a devotee of Krishna or you're still following family tradition. So ultimately, prasadam means the mercy of Krishna. Doesn't say or doesn't mean the mercy of the devas or demigods. So it is always best to first offer to Krishna. And then it becomes prasadam. Yeah. So it will depend on your personal, in our case we can say how much you're reading Prabhupada's books, how much you're trying to follow. So this is the process that Prabhupada has given us, Krishna consciousness. And ultimately there's two things that we should always be following, if we cannot follow anything else. One is to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and the second is to offer our bhoga or foodstuffs to Lord Krishna before we eat it. These two things should always be there. And you can learn from devotees. As you come more to the temple, you can learn from the temple resident devotees or from our congregational devotees who are practicing devotees. and they will guide you into like making simple offerings. Sometimes how you can even make an offering within your mind if you're traveling or in a place where you cannot make these offerings. But always first offer to Lord Krishna. And two things. Chant Hare Krishna mantra, especially on prayer beads, japa mala, and offer your food to Krishna. And then it'll be blessed and it becomes sanctified. And then you can take that. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, one who eats without making a sacrifice or offering to me, verily eats sin only. So we want to stop this sinful activity. Sinful activity means repeated birth and death. So we want, Prabhupada is encouraging us, act like this, do like this, because he cares about us. So you try, you learn from the devotees to practice at home. And two simple things, chant Hare Krishna and offer your food to Krishna. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.